Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into some military history. It's a piece that's still relevant even centuries later. We're talking Carl von Clausewitz's On War.
Ah, Clausewitz, a classic.
And we're tackling specifically chapter 2 of book 2 on the theory of war. We know this is going to be right up your alley, especially for someone dedicated to military strategy.
Yeah, Clausewitz can be, well, let's just say he's not exactly a light read, but that's why you're here with us. We'll break down his ideas, make them clear, insightful, and most importantly, applicable to your experience in the military. Because, even though he was writing back in the early 1800s,
Right after those Napoleonic Wars just changed, like, everything about warfare.
exactly. Even though the battlefields might seem worlds away from modern warfare, the core stuff Clausewitz is grappling with, the nature of war itself, the role of human unpredictability, that stuff still resonates so powerfully today.
He really takes aim at those earlier attempts to create a science of war, doesn't he?
Yeah. He finds them lacking. Yeah. And you know what's so fascinating? What he found lacking is that they were too focused on just the material aspects of war.
Right.
The tech of weapons, troop formations, how the fortress is designed. It's like they tried to turn warfare into some giant game of chess, make the right moves, guarantee victory, completely overlooking.
The human element.
Exactly.
It's like they were treating war as, like, a purely logistical exercise or something.
Right.
But as you know firsthand, wars aren't fought by robots. Well, at least not yet. You've got courage, you've got fear, strategic brilliance, and then just those inevitable human errors.
And those errors can be, well, colossal sometimes, all colliding on the battlefield. And that's Clausewitz's central argument, right? You can't quantify courage, can't predict some general stroke of genius.
Or their blunder.
Right. And you definitely can't ignore the impact of morale, weather, even just dumb luck. So he's challenging everyone, really, to think about military theory in a completely different way.
So if those early attempts were too fixated on just the material, what does Clausewitz offer as an alternative?
Okay, so let's unpack that. And, it's not just, like poring over old maps and battle plans. He really emphasized learning from all kinds of experiences, even ones that seemed totally unrelated at first.
Really?
Because he believed that at its core, the ability to analyze a situation, pick out those key factors, make decisions when the pressure's on, that has applications way beyond just the battlefield.
Huh. I never thought about it like that.
Think about it. You've got a business leader, right? And they're trying to navigate some big merger. You've got a politician facing a tough election, even an athlete, getting ready for that championship game. They all face those challenges that require that same strategic thinking, adaptability, and being able to perform when things get intense.
It's true when you put it that way. It actually makes me think of something Clausewitz himself wrestles with in this chapter, that distinction between tactics and strategy.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I can remember learning those definitions early on, way back in, basic military education. But Clausewitz seems to view them as more nuanced than just win the battle versus win the war.
Oh, for sure. He's way more nuanced than that. And I remember how we were talking about those early theories, the ones Clausewitz kind of tears apart for being so fixated on the material parts of war.
Yeah.
He saw all that, the material stuff, as belonging more to the realm of tactics, the specific maneuvers, how you deploy your troops, how you use your weapons. It's like, think of it like the individual moves in a chess game. Each move has a purpose, but it's all part of a bigger plan.
Okay, so if the tactics are the how of the fight, then what about strategy? How's Clausewitz defining that?
So strategy for Clausewitz is like that overarching why driving all those tactical choices. It's about understanding the big picture, setting your goals, your objectives, and then using every single tool you've got, including those tactics, to achieve them. And it's not enough to just know what you want to achieve. You got to know why it's important, what it'll mean in the long run, right? You got to know when to hold back, when to go all in, even if it means making really tough calls, even if it means changing your plans on the fly.
Right. Makes sense. But then how do you actually go about developing that kind of strategic mindset? It can't be as simple as just reading a book, right?
He'd agree with you there. Clausewitz argues that while you can definitely develop principles of strategy, you can't just create some rigid set of rules and call it a day. Every war is different. Every battle, every single encounter is unique, shaped by its own circumstances. And this is where that whole fog of war thing comes back in.
Because you can plan all you want.
But the second that first shot's fired,
all bets are off.
You better believe it. Be ready for things to go sideways.
So how do you lead then? How do you make good decisions when deep down that at any moment everything could change.
Mm.
It almost sounds like he's advocating for a much more like flexible, adaptable approach to warfare.
He is, absolutely. He's saying, look, commanders have to strike a balance between that theoretical knowledge you get from studying, from reading, and the practical on-the-ground experience,
Mm.
between planning everything out and being able to think on your feet when things inevitably go wrong. And this goes back to that concept of kudo, that gut feeling you get on the battlefield.
Oh, right, right.
Being able to read a situation, understand all the little things that are playing into it, and then make a judgment call, a critical one, with only partial information.
That reminds me of all those stories, those famous battles where a commander just makes this completely left field decision.
Yep.
That ends up totally changing the game. It's like they weren't following some rule book. They were trusting their gut,
Yeah.
relying on years of experience.
Exactly. Because it's about recognizing those patterns, predicting what your enemy's going to do next, understanding the terrain, even factoring in morale, weather. All those things, Clausewitz would say, make for a truly effective leader.
So it sounds like he's really pushing back against this idea that, warfare can just be reduced to some sort of mathematical equation. It's all like science and no art.
100%. He's saying there's a real art to it, an intuition that you can only really hone through experience, study, observation, all of it.
So we've talked a lot about the human side of war, how crucial adaptability is, that whole Kudoli idea.
Yeah.
But Clausewitz does actually give us some concrete things to consider when making strategic decisions, right? He dives into those circumstances that can impact both tactics and strategy. What are some of the things he's highlighting there?
Yeah, good point. He talks about like deceptively simple things, actually. The time of day, weather, terrain, things that might seem obvious on the surface but can make or break an engagement.
So a battle plan that looks perfect back at HQ could fall apart the second you encounter, a flash flood, or realize there's a ravine the map didn't show.
Exactly. He actually uses the example of a battle starting in the morning and how different that might play out compared to a battle starting in the evening. Fatigue sets in, the light changes,
Oh, yeah,
and suddenly those carefully laid plans go out the window.
I can imagine. And terrain, man, terrain could be everything. Clausewitz argues that a commander needs to really master geography, know how to use the terrain to their advantage.
Couldn't agree more. And he's not just talking about knowing how to read a map. He's talking about getting a feel for the land,
Yeah.
knowing how it might impact how your troops move, your supply lines, even morale. You can't lead effectively from some comfy office.
Right.
You got to be out there in the field, getting a feel for things firsthand.
It's like that saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy.
Right.
Right. You can try to plan for everything, but the moment reality hits.
Got to be ready to adapt.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground here. Talked about how Clausewitz really critiques those early attempts at a so-called science of war, how important adaptability and experience are, and that almost instinctive understanding of strategy, the kudoi. He acknowledges that war is, well, inherently unpredictable. There's that fog of war where those very human elements, the courage, the fear, the brilliance, even the big blunders, can really tip the scales more than just having better tech. But with all that said, how are we supposed to actually study war, given how chaotic and unpredictable it is? How do we even begin to make sense of it all?
You've hit on it. That's the million-dollar question. And it's something Clausewitz wrestles with throughout the chapter. He knows that because of how fluid war is, you can't have a perfect theory. You can't have some set of rules that equals automatic victory every single time.
So, no magic formula.
I'm afraid not.
So what's the point of even studying strategy if there's no guarantee? What does he offer instead?
What he offers is almost more valuable, I think. He gives you a framework for thinking about war, for wrapping your head around all the complexities, for sharpening your own strategic judgment. He wants us to study military history, yeah, but not just to memorize names and dates.
Not just to memorize battles.
Right. He wants us to dig deeper. He wants us to understand the why. Why did they make those choices? What factors were they looking at? What other options did they consider? It's about picking those decisions apart.
Seeing what worked, what didn't, and really getting why.
Exactly. It's like, imagine a detective, right, trying to retrace the steps of a crime, trying to figure out what happened, why it happened, and how it all led to that final outcome.
Interesting way to put it.
And just like a detective gets better, sharper with every case, Clausewitz thinks that studying military history, really digging into it, helps a commander develop their own instincts.
So they can start to anticipate problems before they happen.
Exactly. Make smarter decisions when the heat is on.
So it's really not about just memorizing those dates and names. It's about understanding those deeper principles of warfare, the things that hold true no matter what time period you're talking about.
You got it. And that's honestly, that's a big part of why Clausewitz is still so relevant. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, the tools of the trade, they change. We've gone from muskets to missiles, from horses to helicopters.
And who knows what's next, right?
Right. But the fundamental nature of war, the way Clausewitz saw it, that hasn't really changed that much.
It's still about leadership, adaptability,
Yeah.
trying to get inside your enemy's head, and of course, navigating that fog of war we keep coming back to.
And probably the most important thing of all, never forgetting the human cost of war. The way it impacts individuals, whole societies, even the soul of a nation. It's heavy stuff.
It really is. That's something that anyone who's dedicated their life to serving their country, who understands the weight of those decisions, the responsibility of leadership when things get dangerous.
Mm,
They really get that.
for sure. And, Clausewitz, he doesn't shy away from the moral side of war either. In fact, he emphasizes it. He really believed that to truly understand war, you can't just grasp the strategy and tactics. You also need a deep sense of moral responsibility.
So it's not just about winning, no matter what you have to do. It's about understanding why you're fighting in the first place.
Yeah.
And making sure your actions, your choices, all line up with that purpose. And that kind of moral compass, well, you can't learn that from a textbook.
No way. It's something you develop through experience, through thinking about what you've been through, and just by having a deep understanding of what it means to be human.
Right.
Clausewitz, he wants us to approach warfare not as some cold, calculated game.
Right.
He sees it as a deeply human thing. It's complex, it's multifaceted, and it demands strategic brilliance, yeah? But also empathy, responsibility, even moral courage.
So you have to be able to see past the battle in front of you, past even those immediate tactical goals. You need to get those larger strategic and moral implications of your actions. Understanding that every choice you make, whether it's a small firefight or a massive campaign,
It all has a ripple effect.
right, shaping things now and in the future.
Absolutely. And honestly, that might be one of the most powerful and enduring lessons we can take from Clausewitz. He makes us really confront how complex war really is, to really get that it's unpredictable by nature, and to honestly, to approach it all with a little humility, knowing that even the best laid plans, well, they can fall apart.
He reminds us that to be truly great in warfare, it's not about following the rules perfectly. Just like in life, right? It's about being flexible, being adaptable, being able to roll with the punches, learn from your mistakes, and ultimately make the best call you can, even when the pressure's on.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, to our listener, as you continue on your own journey in the military, we hope that exploring Clausewitz's work with us has given you some good insights, a deeper understanding of why his work is still so relevant today. Until next time, keep strategizing.